welcome back to my channel. I'm Rachel, the owner and creator here at the Eclectic Cottage in Spokane, Washington. Happy Thursday, everyone. For today's video, I switched gears into Easter and I completed a few little projects for Easter specifically. I didn't get quite as much done this week as I had hoped. I'm kind of working on resetting the cottage behind the scenes, working on redecorating my windows as well. So it's hard to find a lot of time to spend in the kitchen, but I love the things that I did manage to get done for today. I hope you guys like them as much as I do. And without further ado, let's get to today's projects. I have had this pair of wood rabbit cutouts for a couple of years now, and I honestly don't know why I haven't done something with them prior to today, but I decided it was time to get them out of my stash and get something done with them. So I am starting by removing the Spanish moss that they both had around their necks. This was glued on with some hot glue, and boy, let me tell you, that was a real booger to get off. So I'm working with a razor blade, which I actually broke, and a screwdriver, just trying to pry as much of that off as I possibly can. Once I finally managed to get the bulk of that hot glue removed, I went ahead and took both of these little wood cutouts outside and gave them a good sanding just to get rid of any residue from the glue that was left behind. Now, for whatever reason, I had the hardest time deciding exactly what I wanted to do with these little rabbits. My first thought was to add decoupage paper, so I started by giving them each a couple of coats of DIY's Crinoline, which is this beautiful creamy white color. Now, of course, Crinoline would have been the perfect choice if I had actually stayed with my original decision to put decoupage paper on these. But after getting a couple of coats of the Crinoline on both sides of my rabbits, I changed direction, you guys. So I ended up starting over with a new color of paint. And this is the DIY Cottage color called Ameraucana. I love this color. It's a beautiful kind of robin's egg blue. And the nice thing about the Cottage colors is that they are self-leveling. So they dry nice and smooth. And they also have a built-in sealer, which is great. At this point, I still really didn't have a complete picture of what I wanted these little rabbits to look like when I was finished. I just knew that I liked this color a little better than the Crinoline that I had on them originally. While my paint was drying, I finally managed to formulate a plan for my little rabbits, and I am starting by using this stencil by Redesign with Prima called Little Meadow and some golden ticket liquid patina by DIY. If you've never used Golden Ticket, it is a relatively thin patina. So I am barely dipping the bristles of my brush into it and then pouncing quite a bit of that medium back off onto a shop towel before I go into my stencil. And as I am pouncing or stippling that medium on, I'm starting with a thin layer and then just kind of building my way up from there. You don't want to go in with too much of the medium or it will seep underneath your stencil and make a mess. I decided I wanted to go over the top of my stencil with some flowers, and I chose this beautiful transfer set by Redesign with Prima called Gentle Symphony. I cut out the portion of the transfer I wanted to add to the first rabbit, peeled off the backing, placed it down, and then I just kind of went over it with my fingertips to make sure I had good adhesion, cut off the portion that I wasn't going to need, and then began applying my transfer. This was a little tricky just because I did have some that went over the edges, so I did those areas first. There were a couple of spots I just had to cut so that it was a little easier. And then using that transfer stick, I just rubbed my transfer down into my piece while I peeled back that piece of vellum. This was a pretty simple application. These transfers do tend to go over the cottage colors pretty easily. Once I had the largest piece of the transfer on the larger of the two rabbits, I moved on to decorating the smaller rabbit. And I'm just cutting out the remaining portions of that transfer set and adding them one by one to that smaller bunny. I ended up adding a couple more leaves to the larger rabbit. It just looked a little bit naked in that one spot. And once I had all of my transfers applied, I took a piece of the vellum and just rubbed over all of my transfers, burnishing them in to make sure that I didn't have any wrinkles or air bubbles in them. Now, it's always a good idea to put some sort of a top coat over your transfers to keep them protected. So for these little rabbits, I am adding a coat of Sweet Pickins top coat in matte. I am adding that to the sides and the backs of my little rabbits just so that I have the same finish all the way around. To add a final little touch, I am adding a piece of lace around the neck of each of the rabbits, tying that into a knot, and then I'm finishing the knot off with a little piece of bling that I found on Amazon. I'm just hot gluing that onto the knot, and then each of my rabbits is finished. It might have taken me a while to figure out exactly what I wanted to do with these little bunnies, but in the end, I absolutely love the way they turned out, and I hope you guys like them too. For my second project, I am starting with these chunky wooden spindles I found a while back at Goodwill. And the first thing I'm doing is cutting off the big wooden squares at one end of each of them. And then for one of them, I also cut the other end just a little bit shorter so they weren't both the same height. Then I am going in with DIY's Crinoline, and I am adding a couple coats of that to each of these little spindles. While my spindles are drying, I moved on to the second part of this project, which are these paper mache eggs that I picked up at Hobby Lobby. I am adding a coat of DIY's Fancy Farmgirl to each of these, and then just using my hair dryer to make sure that I get them both nice and dry before I move on to my next step. Now, hopefully you guys saw the video that I did where I added moss to a styrofoam heart that I found at the Dollar Tree. And for that project, I had my industrial strength glue gun and ended up not only melting the styrofoam quite a few times, but also burning the heck out of my poor fingers. And it was a very long and tedious process. For these eggs, I wanted to achieve the same look without the blisters. So I am using my lower heat glue gun, and I am just adding a little bit of that glue and then adding moss over the top, holding it into place until I'm pretty sure that it's going to stay, and then moving on to the next portion of the egg. I'm just working my way around the entire egg, and anywhere the moss is kind of sticking up at all, I'm adding a touch more glue and holding it down into place. And of course, I did the same technique to both of my eggs. Once I had added the moss to both of my eggs, I went back to work on my little spindles. I needed to seal my crinoline paint, and I am starting by adding a coat of that Sweet Pickins top coat in matte. Once that top coat was completely dry, I am going over it with some DIY dark wax. Now I did add a little bit of mineral spirits to my dark wax to make it more like a glaze, and I'm just brushing that on and then using a dry shop towel to wipe back the excess. Now, since I put that Sweet Pickins top coat on first, it's really helping to keep my dark wax from making my crinoline paint look too muddy and just giving me a really beautiful patina, which I love. And once I get that first kind of thin coat of the dark wax applied and then wiped back, I did go in with a little bit thicker dark wax in some of the more detailed areas just to add a touch more grunge factor in those places. Next up, it's time to marry my two pieces together using some hot glue. So I'm putting quite a bit of hot glue on the top of the spindle and then very carefully placing my moss egg over the top and then just kind of holding it into place while it cools. Then I went around the base just to make sure I filled any gaps with some more hot glue. Once I had glued both of my eggs in place, I decided my topiaries needed a little more adornment, so I'm going to be adding some ribbon to both of them. I'm creating what I call a lasagna ribbon just because it's in layers, and so I start with lace and then 2 layers of flour sackcloth and then lace. And rather than tying that whole entire thing around the spindle, I took 1 strip of flour sackcloth and then just use that to tie those pieces of ribbon to the front of my spindle. I just tied that into a double knot, cut them to length, and then I'm adding a little piece of bling again that I found on Amazon. Once I'd finished with the first topiary, I did the same technique on the second, just tying those ribbons to the front of it and then finishing it off with a beautiful piece of bling. I love the way these topiary eggs turned out, and I really hope you guys like them as much as I do. here for today, you guys. I hope you liked my projects and I hope you enjoyed today's video. What did you think of the Easter egg topiaries? I love the way those turned out. And honestly, I have a couple more of those little wooden pieces and I'm thinking I might pick up a couple more of the eggs and just try something different the next go around with them. We'll see. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up. I so appreciate that. And if you haven't already, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and then of course just hit the little notification bell so you don't miss anything. And then don't forget to drop a comment below and let me know what you thought of my projects for today. Just a quick reminder, the paint and products you see me use can be purchased through me at my website, and that is www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com. I carry DIY paint and products, which I have more waxes and some other things coming in on Tuesday. I also carry Sweet Pickins milk paint and products, and don't forget First Crush is still on sale, 35% off until the end of February. I also carry Recycle Treasures decoupage papers and of course some Redesign with Prima. So if you're in need of anything, check those out on my website, and that's www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com. For, let's see, Sunday's video, I have a feeling it's going to be a thrift haul. Like I said in the intro, I have been kind of working behind the scenes trying to get some spring set up and a little bit of Easter set up, and that is going to take the predominant part of my time over the next few days. So it's not going to be a lot of time I can spend in the kitchen. So I'm thinking a thrift haul is the way to go for Sunday. I do have some things. It won't be a big haul by any stretch, but at least it'll be something. So I hope you can join me back here on Sunday for that. Until then, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your week and beginning of the weekend. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it, and I will see you back here on Sunday. Bye.